This is Cemetery Man, or Della Morte dell'Amore, if you want to get all fancy with that Italian title, on your 31 spooky movies of Halloween. And I know what you're thinking, Cemetery Man, that's got to be the worst superhero ever. No, this is a movie, and it's one of those movies that you watch and by the end you're left sitting there wondering, what in the fresh hell did you just experience? And somehow that confusion is exactly why you're going to love this film. It's one of those weird, artsy horror movies that refuses to make sense, but is so entertaining in its bizarre unpredictability that you can't help not looking away. It's the cinematic equivalent of film chowder, equal parts brilliant, absurd, and utterly impossible to explain to anyone who wasn't sitting there with you throughout the entire bout of madness. But I'm going to give it a try. Let's start with the plot, and I am using that word in the most loose way possible because Cemetery Man dances around narrative structure like it's allergic to coherence. Our hero, if you can call him that, is Francesco Della Muerte, played by Rupert Everett, who delivers his lines with the perfect amount of brooding indifference. He's the caretaker of a cemetery in this small Italian town, which seems like a pretty chill job at first, except this is one of those cemeteries where the dead don't stay dead. Yeah, it's for reasons that are never fully explained, because why would you explain something minor like that? The dead just pop up out of the ground after about 7 days after they've been buried, and it's Francesco's job to put them back down permanently. It's like whack-a-mole. And he does this with a kind of bored efficiency, like a retail worker restocking shelves. Zombies again. Give me the rifle. The way Francesco handles these reanimated corpses is part of what makes this movie so darn fun. He's not the typical action hero or terrified protagonist. He's just some guy who's tired. He's seen it, he's over it, and it's hilarious. It's like Groundhog Day if you replaced Bill Murray with a dark, handsome graveyard keeper who's gotten way too good at shooting zombies in the head. Now, Francesco isn't alone in this charming nightmare of a job. He's got a sidekick who is, how shall I put this, a human potato. And no, really, that's what he looks like. He's this rotund mute guy who spends most of the film grunting, eating, and falling in love with the severed head of a reanimated mayor's daughter. Did that actually happen? I think it did. Yes, you heard me right. This movie doesn't just flirt with weird, it takes it out on a date, proposes marriage, goes on a honeymoon, and then has an ungodly family with it. And like I said, that's kind of what makes this movie brilliant. And speaking of love, let's talk about the romantic subplot here, because naturally, even a movie about a zombie-infested cemetery needs a little bit of the old lovin', huh? Enter the woman, and yes, that's pretty much how she's credited because her name is irrelevant. She's played by Anna Falchi, and she's your typical, beautiful, mysterious widow who shows up at a funeral and immediately captures Francesco's attention. Cue the moody lighting, the soft focus shots, and a whirlwind romance that goes from zero to full-on necrophilia in the blink of an eye! There's a point in this movie where Francesco may or may not be having relations with the reanimated corpse of his beloved. But don't worry, it's done in an artsy, dreamlike way, so it feels more like it's philosophical than disturbing. That's a lie, by the way. It's so disturbing. It is incredibly disturbing. What is wrong with this movie? Cemetery Man is dripping with style. The film is a visual feast. The cinematography is lush, atmospheric, and at times downright gorgeous. It's a blend of gothic horror, surrealism, and black comedy, with every frame carefully designed to keep you either in awe or scratching your head. And the tone, well, let's just say it shifts between absurd humor, philosophical musings on life and death, and then bursts into bloody violence so seamlessly that you're not sure if you're supposed to laugh, scream, or have an existential crisis. One of the things that makes Cemetery Man so darn great is its sheer originality. This This is not your typical zombie movie, folks. There are plenty of shambling zombies, to be sure. But they're more of a backdrop to the story, which is less about horror and more about existential dread, the absurdity of life, and just how pointless everything can feel. You know, all the fun stuff in life. There's a scene where Francesco visits the local bureaucracy to officially declare the dead as dead again, and the whole thing feels like a Kafkaesque nightmare where paperwork and apathy are just as horrifying as any zombie. But that's only because they are. In fact, the movie loves to play with the idea that death isn't just a physical thing, but a metaphor for the monotony of existence. When did I get to be so smart? Francesco is trapped in his cemetery, killing the same zombies over and over again, falling in love with the same woman who keeps showing up in different forms, and trying to make sense of a world that clearly has no intention of making sense. There's a particularly memorable line where Francesco says, "I'd rather be dead than alive, but I'm just too lazy." And that's it! That's Cemetery Man, right there in one line. Of course, with a movie this wacko weird, there's bound to be moments where you feel like you're losing the plot, because let's face it, you are. There's a whole side story where Francesco starts murdering living people just to see if anyone will notice. And of course they don't. It's played with such deadpan humor that you honestly kind of forget how absurd this whole thing is. The film blurs the lines between life and death, sanity and madness, to the point where you're not sure if any of this is supposed to be real or if Francesco's just losing his mind in the most entertaining way possible, as of course you lose your mind right along with him, because this is Cemetery Man and it's gonna drive you crazy. And then of course there's that ending. Holy moly. Without giving away too much, let's just say this film's surrealism goes up to an 11 on the weirdness scale. You thought the rest of the movie didn't make sense? The last few minutes will leave you scratching your head so hard your fingers are going to get covered in your own brains. It's one of those finales that feels like the filmmakers just threw their hands up and said, "Oh, let's take some drugs and make it weirder." And honestly, it's perfect. You don't go into Cemetery Man expecting clarity or resolution. You go in expecting this weird, wild ride, and that's what you get. So Cemetery Man, it's one of those rare horror films that manages to be both deeply strange, weirdly profound, and just weird. I got no other word for it. It's weird, but it's weird in the best possible way. It's a zombie movie that doesn't care about zombies, a love story where the boundaries between life and death are about as clear as mud, and a comedy that's as dark as the inside of a black coffin. It's messy, it's nonsensical, and it's absolutely brilliant in the best possible ways. So if you're looking for a movie that's a little off the beaten path, something that's more interested in making you question reality than scaring you, then Cemetery Man is the movie for you. It's the weirdest cinematic graveyard you will ever visit. Just don't expect it to make sense. That's why you'll love it. And that's why you should put Cemetery Man on your list of 31 spooky movies of Halloween. The heck did I just watch?